Judy, can you hear me back there? Ooh, that is a loud voice of Tyler. Wow. Let's take it down a notch. How's that? A little bit better? All right. Well, Teresa shut the doors. I guess that means we can get started. I mean, we're running a little ahead of East Castle. It's a little ahead of our East Castle time. It is 2 o'clock, but usually we like to start meetings at 2:02. Which is the East Castle place. 2 o'clock is what I've come to know and love about East Castle. So, well, welcome. I'm excited to see the interest in this presentation. To be honest, it's one that I have never done before. So, you are getting it here first. It's something obviously I'm very comfortable in explaining. It's just the resident council brought this up as a topic, I believe at the last resident council, Joe, was it? And just asked, basically how does it work? Meaning, how does East Castle Place work? And so that's today, hopefully, what I will share with you, and hopefully you can gain a little bit better understanding of. I will share with you, I do have an organizational chart. I actually have two. They are difficult to read, so I just want to get that out there, but it's going to kind of show the complexities of it and also help kind of walk through that along with my narrative. So, to get things started, I want to go through kind of what we're going to talk about today. So first, who's who, right? Who are we talking about? Who's a part of East Castle Place? What makes East Castle Place East Castle Place? How does it work? Meaning, how does the organizational structure work? And then what do the organizations do? Questions are at the end. As you know with any of my presentations, you have a question, feel free to shout it out. Teresa, can you just make sure that I'm recording? It should be flashing red. I failed on the fire presentation to actually hit the button that says record.
Well, nothing's flashing, but it's red.
That means recording.
Okay.
All right. So, first conversation. Who's who? Summary, right? Very, very original. So, first, East Castle Place residents. Yes, you are a part of this organization, right? You are a part of the organization that receives the services that East Castle Place provides you. We start with you, right? That's why I'm here. Without you here, I'm A, talking to nobody, but B, there's not a reason to have East Castle Place, and we've had East Castle Place for 140 years, so there's clearly a reason. Then we have the East Castle Board of Directors. Now, this is a volunteer board, so they are strictly coming from their jobs or their retired work. We have a physician, we have a financial advisor, we have an accountant, we have an attorney, we have a nursing professor. There is a former executive in senior living, similar to a role that I held, a former social worker and current ad hoc professor at UWM. And then we have Nancy O'Donnell, maybe a name that sounds familiar to some of you. Nancy was the former board chair. She was a former licensed nursing home administrator years ago, has since retired. But that essentially is the makeup. And then Barb Tice, she is our current board chair, and Barb was actually here at East Castle Place for a time period before joining the board as the former CFO, Teresa, I believe. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that is a volunteer board.
How many are on the board?
How many are on the board? I should have counted them up. It is 11 today. The bylaws cap it at 18. The minimum is 9. So we do have ongoing, offgoing members. They have 3-year terms. Three-year terms consecutively is what they can have. As the board of directors, they are the governing body. So if you did not know, and I wasn't going to put this up here, but I'm going to. So we technically have 2 boards. They are the same board. So East Castle Place Board of Directors is the active operations board. They are the ones that are governing, and what I'll say is the operating entity. We also have the Milwaukee Protestant Home Board, or MPH board. Now, if you've seen our audited financials, you will see that they're consolidated. The MPH board is the governing and essentially holding company for East Castle Place. So back in the day, Milwaukee Protestant Home was originally East Castle Place. Milwaukee Protestant Home built New Castle Place up in Mequon, Wisconsin as well. That relationship is since dissolved, really dissolving in 2012, but MPH remained the holding company where our investments are for the longevity of the community. And you can see that in the audited financials and the values there within. So those are the two boards, but essentially same board. So every board meeting we have an MPH board. We go through the agenda. We approve certain items, generally the financials and former minutes from MPH. Any business on the MPH? No. We close that board meeting. We go into the next board meeting. That's the general operations that has been for, my assumption is 2012, when they really went back and forth. I can't speak prior to 2012, but again, this is 2024, so we're a little bit past that. Yes, Rob.
How are the board members selected?
Good question. How are the board members selected? It is a nomination. So, originally, the board was made up of all women. That is the roots of East Castle Place, and that is what Shirley Anthony, Shirley, you were on the board at one point, correct?
Correct.
So, Shirley Anthony,
Left it in good hands.
yes, has much, talk to Shirley, you want to come up here and run the meeting? No? Okay. So all women, and that still holds true. Our board is predominantly women today. And that's, I think, what makes and made and is why we sustained East Castle Place for as long as we have, is because of that foundation that the incredible group of women left for us. But, Rod, to your question, they're nominated. There are currently no residents on East Castle residents, and there were never former Newcastle residents either on the board, to my knowledge. That is a discussion with resident council members at this time, and we do currently have residents that are on active committees. So, for instance, we have a resident on the Fund Development Committee, which is a board committee. The Health and Wellness Committee met yesterday as well, and there's a couple of residents on that committee. So that is how that board makeup is made. So there's a nominating committee on the board of directors. So essentially they're asking, we have a daughter of a resident on the board as well. You know, it's really anybody that comes, if you have individuals that you would think would be beneficial to the governance of East Castle Place, I'm all ears. I pass that on to the nominating committee. So then, yes, Joy.
So just to clarify, the East Castle Place Board and Milwaukee Protestant Home Board are the same board, they just conduct the business.
Correct. Correct. So same board, and again, there's bylaws that they are governed by as well, but essentially I only notated MPH because if you've ever received our audited financials, you will see MPH as a consolidated financial of East Castle Place. So one entity. Paul?
What's the IRS designation?
501c3. So we are a not-for-profit organization. Thank you, Paul. I forgot to mention that. We are a 501c3 organization, so not-for-profit, which is why when you give to East Castle Place, there was a treasure chest, things of that nature, you do receive a tax write-off. We are a charitable organization giving back to the community. Then there's LCS, so Life Care Services. And this is where it gets a little more interesting because the board of directors hired LCS back in 2012 as the management company for East Castle Place. Now you may say, well, why did East Castle Place hire out a managing company? A couple of reasons. And before that, I think I have that in another slide, but Life Care Services is a management company with over 50 years of senior living experience. They have over 140 communities that they own and operate nationwide. We are one of technically two. There's a community, a smaller community, an independent living, assisted living community up in Greenfield, I believe, that LCS manages as well. But Life Care Services is how you got, and you're stuck with me. So, I am employed by Life Care Services. Lindsay DeGoot, our Associate Executive Director, is employed by LCS. So, when LCS comes in and the board, went through a whole RFP process again, I'm not privy to any of that, can speak on that. There's a number of management companies out there. LCS was selected. With the LCS management agreement also comes the executive director and the administrator. So those are generally the two employees in this type of third-party managed relationship that LCS has. And so East Castle Place Board of Directors selected Life Care Services back in 2012. They renewed in 2017, and the Board of Directors again renewed in 2023, if I can do math right. 5-year contracts. We are the third largest provider of senior living services. We've won the J.D. Power Associates for top senior living management company the last 6 years that it's been here. So, like I said, Lindsay and I are those LCS employees. Teresa, the likes of the directors, the staff members, the servers, the housekeeping team, these are East Castle Place employees. Now, I consider myself an East Castle Place employee. I don't want you to think that there's some, it's at the end of the day where the entity's paycheck is coming from. So we are all East Castle Place. We are all here with one mission, and that mission is to take care of you, to take care of the community, and to make sure you're living your lives to the fullest. That is our mission. That is the mission that LCS has. That is the mission that the Board of Directors make sure and oversee. So these are the who's who. Those are the players involved that we'll be talking about today. Now it's going to get a little busy. Yes?
Is LCS a for-profit or a not-for-profit?
LCS is a for-profit, employee-owned company. So based in Des Moines, Iowa. Again, that's that relationship. So it's a fee-for-service, essentially. All right. So you don't need to see those guys. All right. Take a little break from the presentation. All right. So, as I said, this is a little busy. This is a lot busy. So we're going to stick to this one that's a little busy, right? I guess I just show you this because I want you to understand and know that this isn't necessarily a cut and dry, very simple organizational structure. It's fairly complex. So again, it starts with East Castle Place, that's the residents. Board of Directors, I report into the Board of Directors. Then my administrator or associate executive director reports into myself. Lindsay, as the administrator, has the director of social services, director of nursing under her. Underneath them, there is a host of individuals from the assistant director of nursing, the director of nursing, the MDS coordinator, scheduling manager, admissions and marketing team. There is about, I would say, half the employees that are in the healthcare areas. That's the part Lindsay oversees. Then I have the rest of the directors that report into me. So for instance, Teresa has the pleasure of not only officing kitty corner from me, also has the sheer opportunity to report into me and, tell me everything and how great I am,
Pray for me.
Yes, pray for her, exactly. So no, but for instance, so if, Teresa reports into me, Eric, Evan, Brad, our director of finance, Mike Reber, and then Anna. So again, and director of human resources, Jen McEwen. So underneath the directors, we have managers, we have leads. So for instance, that's where the managers, Tim, Tanya, fall into place. Morgan is what we consider a lead, and then the servers thereon. I will tell you, the success starts here. The success starts at our maintenance techs. The success starts at Lila. That is where the success starts in any organization. And from there, it goes up. Because if this foundation is successful, that's going to make Teresa successful. If Teresa's successful, I'm successful. If I'm successful, the board of directors is successful, and ultimately should make us successful as an organization. If I truly believed I was the most important person in this room, we would not have a good organization, in my opinion. So that is also the view of the board of directors. The board of directors does have and entrusts me with making operational decisions. I then in turn trust my director team, like Teresa, sorry you're going to keep getting reference because you're the only one that came today, to make decisions on behalf of the front desk, on behalf of you as residents. Why did we bring in the audiology clinic? Because Teresa said it was a good idea. And I think it's really turning out to be a pretty good idea. They actually added some time I saw this morning because of the demand you have. So those are the types of decisions that, again, operationally are entrusted to us to better, hopefully, your lives. And then from there, obviously, Teresa oversees the front desk and you know how that is a hub for us. And so again, that's really where and how an organization, in my opinion, should be structured, should be focused. Yes, if something doesn't go wrong, if a decision is made that doesn't go well, that goes right back to the top. That is my role. But at the end of the day, that's where I'm going to have those conversations and make sure that we're doing it to the best of our ability. If and when we fail, we learn from that, and that we don't repeat that. Ms. Martin.
It may not be on this chart, I'm not sure what chart it should be on, but the survey referred to the security team.
Mm-hmm.
What is the security team? I didn't know what they were talking about.
So the security team falls underneath Eric as the director of facilities. Our security team is what we reference our overnight security team, our third shift. Nick, Garland, and Lee. So the ones that oversee the front desk and do the rounding in the buildings is what we consider our security team.
Okay.
So
I have no clue on the survey.
So, and again, I'm sure there's other areas, departments that maybe you weren't familiar with, and understandably you could mark NA or go with what you felt was the best answer there, but that falls underneath Eric. All right, so that's the organizational structure. Back into this. Perfect. All right. So how does it work? Kind of talked about it, right? So Milwaukee Protestant Home, East Castle Place Board of Directors hired LCS in 2012 to assist in managing the day-to-day operations. Why? Again, from my understanding, there were some financial concerns that were brought, when East Castle and Newcastle were together and different things of that nature. So there was some bank requirements at the time that said you need to find somebody to help manage your organizations. That is when Newcastle Place was sold. Teresa's nodding her head. I keep looking over because she was here during that time. But 2012 was a big time for East Castle Place in its kind of 100 and at that time 25, 30 years. And so that's when LCS came in. LCS took part ownership in Newcastle Place as well as took over the operations of Newcastle Place. I worked at Newcastle Place during that time, not during the transition, but shortly thereafter. The agreement, again, was signed in 2012, again, extended in 2017, extended in 2023. So LCS will remain here through at least 2028. LCS is then responsible as that third-party managed agreement entity, so to speak, to run the day-to-day operations, and that's why I'm here before you. And then the LCS, and the other way I kind of look at it is MPH ECB hired LCS for the administrative support of running the community and the LCS leadership team. When I say administrative support, there's a lot of systems that go into running a community like East Castle Place. And LCS has a corporate office in Des Moines and has best practices, but they also have corporate-wide systems that we at East Castle Place are able to benefit from and not have to pay for it on our own, for instance. Yes, there is a fee, obviously, for the management, but there's some things in that management fee that we would be paying for regardless if we had LCS or if we were our own property. For instance, the timekeeping system. If you can imagine, we have close to 180 employees that clock in and out of East Castle Place in a given month, right? There's a lot of tracking. Department of Labor have reports. We have to report that to the federal government. That piece, we have full support, and they can take those metrics and benchmark us against other communities on how efficiently are we running, things of that nature, and also support us when we have issues with the system. That one system is what I mean when there's some administrative support. We also have a regional marketing director that helps Anna and the team, as well as Joe and Amy, with some best practices that LCS has. We have a group purchasing organization, CPS. We have a contract with Cisco, as well as a number of other companies. Because of the purchase power LCS has, East Castle Place benefits. And so Cisco, for instance, we are getting really good pricing from them, but it's not because it's East Castle Place that's buying, it's because they have 140 organizations that are buying from Cisco. So when you have that much purchase power, you're able to negotiate much stronger than myself saying, hey, I have a lot of residents, I have 150 residents, they're negotiating at 30,000 residents. A little bit different negotiations when you get to that scale. LCS is providing that for East Castle Place as part of that management agreement and management service. Not to mention all the support that Lindsay and I receive throughout the year, the different conferences our staff are able to attend, to know best practice, to bring those back to different staff members, so that we can continue to operate and hopefully improve and be best in class, of senior living. And that's something that, I think we're doing a good job at. I think there's opportunities to improve, and hopefully you'll share some of those opportunities with us on your most recent resident satisfaction survey, but also that you're not uncomfortable sharing those ideas with us, throughout the year, throughout the day, throughout, the hours. We're just wrapping up the courtyard project. That was something that, many of you residents said was important. So we listened, and again, part of that is just part of the philosophy LCS has, and making sure they're putting the customer first and foremost.
Tyler,
Yes.
you used a term that's a little confusing to me. You said own, but LCS owns part of the community. How does that relate to a non-for-profit?
So I apologize. LCS does not own any of East Castle Place.
Okay.
LCS owns properties outside of East Castle Place. So I think of their book of business, I think they have 50 to 60 that they have equity in, whether they're the majority partner or minority partner. There's an equity piece on their balance sheet, essentially. But no, rest assured, LCS only manages East Castle. So it is a strict fee for service. LCS owns 0% of East Castle Place, because in that regard, Newcastle Place, when they did take ownership, Newcastle turned to a for-profit entity from a not-for-profit entity. So East Castle Place, again, 501c3, there is no thoughts about changing that. So, Ms. Bill.
What makes us a nonprofit?
So, good question. So our not-for-profit status really goes back to how we were set up as a not-for-profit, meaning we're taking care and providing services to outside residents, right? We're not just providing services to you. We do have a philanthropic arm as well that we give back to the community, as that's one of the requirements, but also it's really goes back to the federal status that we have, that we were designated with many years ago when East Castle Place, or Milwaukee Protestant Home then, was established. So it really means that all the profits also any profits stay within the organization, meaning that we don't have shareholders that we're providing dividends to or anything of that nature. But truly we're continuing to live and provide a philanthropic mission and service, which is taking care of seniors and taking care of outside community members. So again, just to kind of continue, as the resident council asked, Tyler, how were you hired? Who's your boss? Kind of thing. And so Lindsay and I, again, were hired by LCS employees by LCS, but with the approval of the board of directors. So, i.e., LCS recommended myself to East Castle Place as a candidate to be an executive director for East Castle. I went through the interview process just like any employee would, and I was interviewed by the board of directors. And the board of directors said, sure, you're the best we got. So, no. That's why Teresa wasn't part of that decision. No. But no, that ultimately, so the board of directors then said, we approve the hire of Tyler. LCS then essentially changed my status in LCS from administrator to executive director, and then I became executive director of East Castle Place. And again, my role is to work with the director team and the staff to fulfill the wants and needs of ECB residents, as well as ensure you're receiving the lifestyle that you expected that comes with living at East Castle Place. I do report to a director of operations management. You may see him around from time to time. Barrett Way is his name. Barrett is essentially my boss that I report to at LCS. However, Barrett technically also reports to the board of directors, since the board of directors has the relationship with LCS. So, I report on a monthly basis to an executive committee of the board that meets monthly, as well as a couple other committees on a more regular basis. And then we have a full board of director meetings. It's usually in Lindsay Hall, and it's 5 times a year. Why not quarterly, or why 5 times? The board of directors can tell you. No, it's based on kind of the calendar. So it's January, it's March, it's certain milestones, June, and then August we have one upcoming, and then we have our annual board meeting in October of each year. And then we take November, December, exec committee meets, but the full board does not, and then we ramp back up in January. Joe?
Are board members paid?
It is a volunteer board, so there is no payment for board members. They will be paying for the gala when they attend, so it's not even like necessarily a perk of that nature. There is a small budget line item for the board of directors for, if there's a board retreat, which we haven't done, or something of that nature. Again, it's very, very nominal. So there is no payment. And again, if the board member says, I don't want to be on the board anymore, I also can't be like, you have to give a proper notice because it's volunteered. So they volunteer not to show up. So that's how the board of directors. But again, I will say that the board of directors is very supportive of myself, of LCS, and the operations. And I think they also, again, as the decisions that have been made this year as well as previous, have the best intentions for you. But truly the governance of East Castle Place is their responsibility. The operation day-to-day is really what I should be able to do. Not to say that they aren't open to you, not to say that you aren't open to them to give them direct feedback. I'm not at all a conduit or a shield or anything of that nature. But again, I hopefully will be able to, with the incredible leadership team I have, as well as the staff that are taking care of you, be able to respond and answer, hopefully, the questions that you may have. So, and then what do we do? Again, you as residents, live life to the fullest. Responsible for the governance of the community is the ECP and MKH board. LCS is responsible for the day-to-day management of East Castle by way of myself and Lindsay. And then the ECP staff are the responsible ones and the most important ones for the execution of the services that we provide at East Castle Place. And just conclusions, the complexities within the operations are great. Again, we didn't even dive into, all the fun stuff that we get to on a daily basis. But I do want to, again, rest assured that all parties and individuals within these organizations are working together to ensure that you have the best experience at East Castle Place. So that is the high-level organizational structure of East Castle Place. I don't know, Joe, or any other resident council members, if that's what you were looking for. Or if any of you were looking for that when you came into this presentation. But again, if there's any questions, happy to, Jim.
The financial stability of the organization is important to us because we have an investment, or each one of us. You mentioned that there was a concern by banks back in 12. How has the organization been doing financially from an overall perspective in terms of bottom line?
So the question was about the financial stability of East Castle Place and therefore Milwaukee Protestant Home, right? So you'll see a little bit of that at the end of this month when we talk about budget. But the banking requirements that we have are a debt service coverage ratio of 1.2. So meaning that the day-to-day operations can cover the debt payments that we have on the mortgage and the long-term debt. The most recent covenant is we were at 2.8. Days cash on hand are north of 600. So that means that financially East Castle Place is very stable. Between the consolidated, because that's really what the banks look at us as when we were going out for financing, they saw us as a very financially sound partner, which is why we had over 7 banks inquire when we went out for an RFP for our debt, for the construction debt of the project. So I will share that in my time, the refunds, because I know that's probably what you're speaking to in the investment, that 90% that will return to your family or whatever percent that may be in your case. On average, it's anywhere between, in my time, 4 to 8 months. In Brad's time, it's never lasted longer than a year from a refundability standpoint. Again, the contract doesn't explicitly state when we owe those refunds. It's kind of based on a list, but I can assure you that you can, happy to have Brad or myself review the audited financials with you from last year. Our fiscal year runs from October 1st through September 30th. But that audit is for you. And again, Whitfleet does our audits. So you can take a look, see our banks, but again, you should feel very confident about the financial stability of this organization. I think, again, 2012 was right when I joined the industry. We're coming off of the 2008 housing crisis. Unfortunately, that was also when I think Newcastle Place was getting built. And so and then East Castle, 2006 is when this building was built. So there's just a lot of things, I think, at that time. So again, things happen. East Castle Place remains strong. They made great decisions back then to remain strong. And that's what, we're afforded with today. So I don't think I'll be here for the next 140 years. I did make a note. I was talking maybe to the team. I was like, yeah, for the 180th anniversary. And I was like, I don't know if I'll be here for the 180th. But maybe. So, Paul?
Is a portion of the fee that we pay to enter invested?
So the question is about the portion of money, the entrance fees that are paid. So a portion of that's going to help refund the outstanding refunds, right? It's part of the registration.
Yeah.
The remaining balance will go into our investment accounts. So whether that's a money market account, we work with BMO Harris on our investment strategies. So yes, part of that is invested.
Do we have investments beyond just certificates?
Yes.
Okay.
So there is a board
What's the
investment
broad
committee.
range, or are we in the market, so to speak?
It's long range. It's conservative. So it's performed, much like I'm sure many of your portfolios, with the ups and downs of the market. Yes?
Does Protestant Home or East Castle have an endowment fund?
The question is about the endowment fund. Depends on how you look at an endowment fund. We do not currently have a designated endowment fund. We did receive a very large gift that is essentially acting like an endowment fund, as we expect a certain return to grant a scholarship, so to speak, is kind of what that endowment was designated for. But we do not have a full endowment like St. John's, for instance, and if you're familiar with them, we do not have an endowment of that nature.
Is that a board decision not to have an endowment fund?
I believe at this time, yes, it is. Any other questions? Okay. Well, again, if you do have questions, if this spurned more questions, hopefully it didn't spurn less answers. But again, I appreciate the engagement again that you all have in knowing how the organization runs. Hopefully it's because you appreciate the organization, not, you know, go do to get rid of this guy. But no, I just truly appreciate it. I hope that, you know, this helped. Again, being as transparent as I can with you all. And again, just appreciate your interest. It's always fun to kind of take a look back and look and see how the organizations have progressed over the years, and you know what we work in every single day. Yes, Spartan.
A board usually has like a strategic plan, or you have a strategic operations plan, or maybe both. Are those public or not? Could we see them, or?
We do not have right now a specific strategic plan, because the strategic plan was just essentially completed in the last year with the reposition of the campus. And so the board is going to be going back into more of a strategic planning type of mindset come really probably January with the annual board. And again, residents were a part of that strategic plan back in, Teresa, it was 2019?
Yeah.
2019. So it's kind of a 5-year strategic plan. And so again, even with COVID, you know, the reposition was the roots of that strategic plan. And again, we've been looking out in the crowd, very successful with that strategic plan. So now it's time to go back and say, what is next? Is there next steps? So I think that's something that the board will start to take on probably in the new year is my guess. With obviously at the end of this month I'll be doing another presentation. It's the presentation month for Tyler, but this one is the budget presentation, and so that's the one we do annually. So that's the focus for the board of directors this month, and then October is really that annual kind of wrap up meeting, and then what does the next year look like? What does the next year bring? Welcome on some new board members. So. All right. Anything else? Kind of a dry meeting for a Friday, but hopefully you're all able to enjoy. It's windy out there, don't get blown away, but it looks like it's going to be a beautiful weekend. So hopefully you're able to get outside and enjoy the weather. And again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything that you do for me, and let me keep coming back to work. It's a lot of fun, especially when I get to work with, you know, the likes of Teresa Jenkins and all the other wonderful directors that I get to work with. So thank you.
Thank you.